Thank you for tuning in for today's workshop on the topic of discovering your learning style. I'm going to lead today's presentation on this topic. My name is Jamal Washington, and I'm a Fresno State Supportnet academic coach. In academic coaching, we cover a wide range of student support intangibles that play a role in discovering success. And my role in SupportNet is to offer that kind of introduction to the intangibles in success, whether it be in one-on-one academic coaching sessions or in webinars and academic success workshops, such as this one that you're going to take part in today. So I want to thank you for your time, and I'll go ahead and get started with the information we have for today. So first, again, what is SupportNet? So we are a campus support program that connects students to one-on-one academic coaching sessions, university resources, and workshops that increase college level preparedness and achievement during the college experience. So this is something critical that we do in our role. And for so many students, there's all of these different things that fall into this category of, I never knew that I needed to know this, or I needed to master this, or I had to be familiar with this in order to be successful in my college experience. And so these workshops target really shrinking that gap in preparedness, in resources that are accessible to students in order to still push any student in the Fresno State community towards success. And so that's the goal of our academic coaching services. SupportNet provides one-on-one academic coaching and holistic student support. And we do so with things such as building successful college level study habits. So this is something that we can do in those one-on-one academic coaching sessions, as well as in workshops and webinars, such as this one today. We focus on areas such as time management and academic organization. We also can work with assessments on study skills and strategies. So a couple of those assessments, one of which we'll introduce today, is called the Vark, as well as the LASSI. Vark is an acronym for Visual, Auditory, Reading, Writing, and Kinesthetic Learning Styles. And the LASSI is the Learning and Study Strategies Inventory. So we use both of those assessments to identify areas to really build study skills for students. We also introduce students to support systems available through the university services and programs. And things such as our academic success workshops create a bridge for students when it comes to introducing all of the intangibles that go into success. So I wanted to open this workshop by creating a level of importance with the information I'm going to share today. And so the question I want to open with is, what are some things that you've discovered about yourself as you approach learning new information? So think about this currently, this semester, as you've been introduced to new information. What are some of the things you've discovered about yourself? Think back over the past few months and different situations. It doesn't always have to be the classroom. It could be work. It could be in life in general. What are some things you've discovered about yourself as you approach learning new information? You really want to keep in mind what it is that you've learned, what those experiences entail, because that's going to tie into some information and some um, results that we get as we go through the Vark assessment and discovering exactly how learning style can be used in maximizing our success. A quote to remember is, never stop learning because life never stops teaching. A couple things that we want to talk about before going into the Vark is, first of all, what is the Vark? So the Vark assessment is a short, simple inventory that was developed in 1987 by Neil Fleming from New Zealand, and has been well received because it's helped people understand each other and assist them in learning more effectively for a variety of situations. So whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the workplace, this assessment has been critical in helping people understand this is the way I can most efficiently and effectively process new information and really maximize learning to the highest ability in these settings. Um, what can the Vark do? The Vark can reveal to you the most effective way in which you process information to maximize learning experiences. So the Vark can be a valuable tool to help you unlock the most effective and efficient way to learn versus trying to approach it from a one-way fits all type of angle or perspective. So when we think about the first year experience in college, the first semester, the first few weeks, one thing that I found is a lot of students will find themselves trapped or at a loss because they're trying to study and process new information the way we perceive or we even see in class how other students are going about preparing and studying for classes and new information. And a lot of times, if that's not our learning style, if that's not the most effective way of learning, we can really get discouraged because we feel like we aren't at the same level as others, or we're not capable of reaching the same outcomes as others, or that it's going to take us a lot more time to get to learning and mastery and understanding. And this is not true. It's really not what you do, but how you do it. And so when it comes to learning and studying and getting a stronger mastery of new information, is how we go about doing it that's most important. Not that we sat down and we made an attempt to do it, but how we went about doing it. So the Vark is going to introduce the most effective way to go about that. So I'm going to move ahead here in this webinar, and you'll see here on the mid left side of the screen here a link to take the Vark assessment. So in your internet search engine, you can enter this web address into the link. The Vark is a free assessment. There is going to be 16 different scenarios that you see. I won't say questions, but 16 different scenarios that you see once you open up this Vark web page. And in fact, what I will do is I will go ahead and show you what the page looks like and how to access this. So um, once you enter that link that is on that screen, you will see this as the Vark website. And to start the assessment, you just hover over questionnaire and then click the Vark questionnaire. As you scroll down, you'll see these statements here. So first question, I want to learn how to play a new board game or card game. I would. And as you go through this assessment, you might find that there's more than one answer that applies. So if the question doesn't apply to you at all, you can leave it blank. If you find that there's multiple answers that apply to you, go ahead and select as many of the answers that apply. So for myself, for this one, I want to learn how to play a new board game or card game. I would, and I definitely will probably watch others. I would read the instructions, um, and I would probably listen to somebody explain it and ask questions. Even though I wouldn't possibly go to this, I think these three that I've selected are more likely what I would do to try to get an understanding of how to play that game. So with this assessment, you do that for each of these different scenarios you see, and you want to scroll to the bottom through all of these questions. And once you complete it, you want to go ahead and click this OK button. What will happen is it will calculate your scores for each of those learning methods, and there's going to be a number next to visual, aural or auditory learning, reading, writing, and kinesthetic. So there's going to be a number that corresponds with each, and you want to take account of where those numbers fall, what those numbers are, because the numbers are going to be an indication of what's your strongest and most dominant learning preference. Maybe you have more than one, so there's scores where you might see an even score. You might have 888 for multiple learning styles. But noting what your scores are for this Vark assessment when you click OK is going to be important, because the next step of our workshop is going to look at those results and how they can be applied in learning new information. So as we go back here to our presentation, we've went to and demonstrated how to access the Vark website, how to take the assessment, what the results are going to look like. So now we want to move ahead to breaking down information about these 4 different learning styles and how they can be maximized for each type of learner that is out there. You may also find that you have or share a combination of learning styles. And so this is going to give you versatility and a range of options in how you can go about processing information. So we're going to start with the visual learning style. And when it comes to visual learning, this preference uses symbolism and different formats, fonts, colors, things that can emphasize points through visualization. It does not include video and pictures that show images. It's not merely visual memory, but it's how we make connections with what we see. So a visual learner is going to be at their most effective when it comes to drawing things, working with plans, maps, diagrams, working with logos, branding, and designs. Tasks where you're able to detect patterns. You're also going to see, as a visual learner, you're going to gravitate to written information that's filled with graphs, charts, and diagrams. The layout on a page and things that are visually striking, things that are unusual, are going to be the things that we tend to learn the most from. It's often more important than the content itself. It's the visual information, the visual layout, the things that are unique about what you see. To use color and shape, that's going to be an important application of a visual learning style. There's an appreciation for different, interesting layouts, fashion, design, and clever use of space. Also, as a visual learner, things that make use of color and shape, uh, foods, decorations, festivals, things that are spectacular um, and original in how it conveys a message or how it conveys a feeling or an event. Also, there's going to be a notion for the visual learner to gravitate to presenters who use gestures and picturesque language. So if your words can create images, that's also going to be an element that really helps the visual learner and enhances visual learning. So these are some important things to note. Moving on to the aural or auditory learning style, this preference is more for information that's spoken or heard. So this is the means of processing information at its highest for this learning style. Making statements and using questions are an important part of learning for those who have this preference. So in learning, you're going to see that there's a unique step ahead and a step forward to learning when you're able to talk things over, even if you've not gotten things sorted out. There's going to be importance in holding the floor, but remembering your talk often goes in different directions and can lack structure. But the fact that you're talking it out, holding the floor, being a part of a conversation means everything when it comes to learning. For this reason, resources such as your professor office hours, having conversations and study groups with classmates, um, listening to debates, if that's related to a topic you're talking about, podcasts, things like that, where there's opportunities to hear things, talk it out, create a discussion in the learning process. These are going to be important elements to learning new information. There's also going to be a natural ability to enhance learning by explaining things through talking. So if you're role playing or if you're in a study group and you take on the role of teaching chapter 1, that role is going to set you up to where you have to be in the setting of explaining things and talking to others. Also, if you're a tutor or if you're working in supplemental instruction and maybe you volunteer as the person who's going to explain an example amongst that group in that time, these are things that can enhance learning to the next degree. Putting forward a case for or against really puts you in a greater situation to hear, listen, and talk things out, to learn from the ideas of others and what they have to say about your ideas is going to be important. again, it's that opportunity to talk things out and hear what it is that is in the learning process by being involved in that way. Debates and arguments, deep discussions, listening to those who know a lot and have authority. This might mean that you want to go out of your way to uh, listen to podcasts, TED Talks, YouTube videos where you have a specialist, somebody who is at a level of expertise in a topic or a subject that you're trying to learn. These could be elements that add to learning. As well, if the university ever invites a guest speaker or someone who works in a specific field, those opportunities are going to be rare opportunities for someone with this learning style to really take a step forward in learning and push learning to the next step forward. Inserting witty comments. So even making things comical in learning is going to be connected to how we learn and how we process information. So every now and then a witty comment to just make things fun or make things fresh is going to be critical. Using different voices to emphasize things. So I don't know if this may be an experience you have to this point, but if you're ever in a lecture or you're ever listening to a guest speaker and they get to a point where they're telling a story or they're really trying to, really get you to follow what they say so their tone could get louder, or all of a sudden it gets tremendous. Those are things that can really stand out to the aural and the auditory learner. It's what you can remember in the conversations, in those discussions, and what you hear and what you're able to speak that make a difference. If you're having a debate and someone raises their voice in that debate, all of a sudden you have something that's going to be retained a lot higher and mean a lot more when oral and auditory learning style is your highest process of inputting new information and learning new information. And then last but not least, but having opportunities to put forward your own point of view, putting things into your own words. So with this, highly consider using a voice recorder. If you're going through reading, try reading aloud, playing back a lecture, playing back readings that you've done aloud to hear it a second and a third time. The more opportunities you have to speak, hear, listen, you are going to be in such a higher ability and range for learning and processing new information. So these are some techniques that can help when that's the learning style that is your highest of the four. When it comes to reading and writing learning style, this preference is going to be learners who gravitate higher to printed words and the most important way to convey and receive messages. To read and write, there's going to be this repetition that happens with that. So reading and writing learners can really process information by writing it, reading it over and over and over. In the process of, say, rewriting your class notes and maybe making them nicer, what happens is you're going through and you're looking at the notes, then you're looking at your page you're writing on, and in between, you're processing information. You're reading it and then you're rewriting it. And so the mind is making the connection and storing information as you go through that process. There's going to be a preference for reading and writing learners to really gravitate to lists. So thinking about an outline and how that works, and you have subgroups. So you have a main point, and then you have A, B, C, D, which could be additional bullet points that go with a main point, or 1, 2, 3, 4 attached to a main point, and organizing things into categories in this way. This is something that the reading and writing learner is really going to learn from and have a different takeaway in comparison to learners of other styles. Um, when you're able to arrange words into hierarchies and points, create order and structure in things that are presented through text and through font, this is going to be important. Extracting meaning from headings and titles. So headings and titles, what words are used, definitions, these are all going to be things that the reading and writing learner really maximizes in how they process information. There may also be a tendency to step in and correct mistakes, especially misspelling. There has to be clarity in what's been written. So you may also find that if you're sharing notes with a classmate and you can't really understand what they wrote, this could be a particular challenge especially if reading and writing learning is your highest method of processing information. Because there's so much of an emphasis on words, how they're used, how they come together to create meaning, you're also going to find that challenging rules and regulations because of their wording is also a tendency. So pay attention to this. There might be some courses in particular where this could be something where learning goes to the next level. Off of the top, I could think of, say, a political science class or certain law classes, business law classes, for example. You might see that you're exposed to different rules and regulations, but learning takes a whole different step forward because you're able to apply meaning behind the words that are used to define certain elements in that particular subject. And last but not least, there's going to be a natural ability to learn and get the most out of processing new information when you're working with people who write or speak using challenging words. They're not going to use the everyday simplistic terms that you hear everywhere. It's going to be unique terms, maybe a new word that you're not familiar with, and then it prompts you to go get a dictionary or a thesaurus to figure out what it was that they were trying to say. When you are surrounded by people who write and speak using this type of terminology and this type of wording to what it is that they have to say, that's going to be a catalyst for learning. And last but not least, we have our kinesthetic learning style. This is going to be a more hands-on approach to learning, more activity-based learning. So this preference uses your experiences and the things that are real, even when they are shown as images on screens. So the kinesthetic learner is really going to gravitate well to autobiographies, documentaries. You're also going to find that you are going to have a much stronger knowledge when there's opportunities for application before simply being introduced to theories. So, for example, if we were measuring a room and we were really trying to get familiar with the Pythagorean theorem, but we're trying to measure the perimeter of a room to make that demonstration, when going through that scenario, if we're actually taking out measuring tape, walking around the room, measuring it, and then we introduce the application, well, we could shorten this whole experience by just measuring one side and then the other side. And then we use this formula to find the measurement of this beam that runs right across the room into a perfect triangle. So walking through something like that is going to be a really powerful means of learning information when you can use applications before simply just going into a theory. And this is without justifying it with points of application. There's also going to be demonstrations followed by applying what's been learned, talking about real things in life. So the more real, the more you can feel the learning experience, the better. So if we were talking about social injustice, and then there was an opportunity for a guest speaker to come in and tell their story, or we're going to watch a YouTube video or a TED talk where someone shares their experience in that injustice, in that situation, and they can tell you the real life details. That's where learning is going to go to the next degree for a kinesthetic learner. Also, there's going to be learning through interactions. So doing things with others, making things happen, study groups, SI, tutoring, physically working through problems and that repetition. When it comes to student athletes, this could connect to practice. We can't just watch a video about how to run winning plays or how to execute effective plays in our sport. We have to actually get on the field. We have to run simulations. We have to run practice. We have to do that with others. So for kinesthetic learning, it's all connected to activity, to others, to the application of real to what it is that we're processing in our mind. There has to be an element of reality to it. Physicality, practical problems and problem solving, finishing tasks, team projects could also be an element where the kinesthetic learner goes to the next degree because there's an actual thing and there's connection to others attached to this learning style. There's going to be a preference to work and have outcomes and goals that can be measured. So, being part of a team, being valued for your experiences and contributions, working with people who can apply their ideas, and really being in a network of people who are concrete, relevant, and down to earth. Now, again, I can't emphasize enough when it comes to this connection to others, the reality, the actions connected to learning. This means that we will have to step out of the way that a lot of classes might present learning to us. Going into a study hall with 200 other students might not necessarily get all of these elements. So, this is going to mean that in order for learning to take the necessary step forward to have us at our best, we have to go out of our norm and say, you know what, I'm going to create time to find autobiographies and documentaries. I'm going to create time to go to the office hours and have a discussion with this professor. I'm going to create opportunities in my time to go to tutoring or SI. I'm going to create time to connect with the study group, and we're going to have an effective discussion. We're not going to get off task and start talking about pop culture. We're going to, for this hour, we're going to drink coffee, eat pizza, whatever it is, and we are going to work on this subject here. So these are elements that can really take each of these learning styles and these learning preferences to the next degree. So not necessarily sticking to just, I'm gonna reread the book, I'm gonna reread my notes, I'm gonna make sure I memorize it and store my information in that way that I've seen others seemingly do without any issue. You want to try to customize the learning experience towards the strengths based on your Vark assessment. If you find that you are a multimodal learning style, meaning that you have a couple learning styles that either have the same score or you have multiple learning styles where it's a similar score, if you have multiple preferences, you're in the majority of somewhere between 50 and 70% of any population. So people with multimodal preferences find it necessary for them to use more than one strategy for learning and communicating. And they can often feel insecure when they're in a situation where there's just one way to do something. So others seem to get it doing it that one way, but they feel insecure because that one way kind of minimizes the way they can go about learning. Now, moving ahead here to tools that can be used for improved learning. And I know some of these I've mentioned, but I would say really keep this in mind as Fresno State is at a point where we're working remotely with our services, with the engagement that you're going to have with your class, your professors, your classmates. Think along those lines of how this can be applied, and some tools to consider is that you want to make connections with your classmates and your professors. For some subjects, especially more challenging subjects, this might mean that you have to step out of your norm, out of your comfort zone, and reach out to people that you may not be too familiar with, because from there, maybe following class, there's an opportunity now that everybody's working remotely and transportation or time may not be as much of an obstacle to create study groups through Zoom, to create opportunities for conversations with your professors. Instead of going to an actual office for office hours, it might be through a virtual Zoom meeting, or it might be via text message or email, whatever their preference is for engaging with students. This might be a tool to really improve learning. And keep in mind, if you're a visual learner or you have to learn through auditory where you have those discussions, these are tools that can really maximize those learning styles. Kinesthetic as well. These are ways where learning isn't just books, notes, memorization, but now there's activities, now there's things to see, now there's things to hear, an additional opportunity to see, hear, and do in the learning process. YouTube and Google are also some great learning software. Khan Academy is another great tool to use in learning. Khan Academy has expanded its base of material and review content for various subjects. So even though it started as a science and math based software, it now includes subjects that can reach political science, economics, statistics, um, history, art history. Khan Academy has a wealth of resources in there to assist in learning outside of the classroom and enrich the learning experience. And it is free to use. So definitely look into Khan Academy. Podcasts can be an effective tool in learning. Whiteboards, so for subjects like chemistry and math, working through problems and repetition using a whiteboard can really make a difference. Notebooks and planners can help with organization. This can be helpful, especially for the reading and writing learner. Working with the computer, tablet, and cell phone as it comes to processing new information. Each of these different points of technology present different accessibilities and features that can really enhance learning and allow us to get more out of the learning experience. A voice recorder as well is another example of technology and how it can be applied in learning. When it comes to visual learning and processing through that way, or even the reading and writing, using highlighters, colored pens, and pencils, color coding the information we have to process, or maybe just a system of this color with this information means this color means this, and having a symbol process of what our information looks like and creating that visual uniqueness to how we gather and put together our information can be a really a strong tool for some of the learning styles we talked about earlier today. Also consider sticky notes. So in this bottom quadrant here, you see these colored sticky tabs. These can be used to organize a book, a binder. They can be used to organize pages of notes. For an open book exam, for example, these tabs can be used to maybe indicate a section where there's some particular information that is going to be introduced. And it's a quick reference. So in an open book exam, this can help you save time because you're not having to flip through the book or the index and then a certain page and lose time doing all of that. You've already pre-organized because of these sticky tabs. And the color coding makes it easier to know where stuff is if you're going to use that kind of system. Also, flashcards. So using flashcards can be a helpful tool in learning. This can create a visual learning process, especially if you use flashcards and then there's a color coding system that goes with it. Or there's images on the front of a card and then information you have to know with the image on the back end of the card. Practice tests. This is really critical. I think all learning styles are going to need practice tests to go through that scenario, to know what it looks like to see this many questions and have this much time and look up and see the clock is running out of time and where you are. Or to be kinesthetic in that learning process and feel the heart rate, the nerves. You see the time, and you see this many questions. You're working through problems, so you're actually doing it as if it's the actual test. To hear the buzzer go off when time is up, to read and write through various problems and go through that problem solving process. Those are all elements you get in the practice test. But as you do it, even if it doesn't look great and the results aren't great from the beginning when you do it, the more times you practice test, the more times you encounter all of those different aspects of the test, the better prepared you are to navigate through them when you get to the actual test. Also consider the opportunities to take part in labs, museums, field trips, internships, volunteering, any of those learning opportunities and spaces where there is a actual face-to-face, hands-on approach to the subject material and the career that you may be preparing for. Guest speakers, project-based learning, team assignments, these are all going to be elements that take learning from books, notes, memorization, exams to actual hands-on, practical, engaging learning experiences that if you're a kinesthetic learner, or if you're a visual learner, or if you're an auditory learner, these types of experiences are exposing all of those different senses, all of those different learning abilities. So taking advantage of this in the learning style based on the results of the assessment can really enhance and push learning to a higher level of learning, a more efficient level of learning, and something that quantifies into the results that we want to see in our academic experiences. So just as today, you'll see that Supportnet is behind a wide range of academic success workshop topics. These bulleted topics here are just the beginning of where we are. We are looking to expand on these topics and more because there's so many intangible elements that go into how to be a successful student. And we want to try to create content that really introduces these strategies that can make a difference in your academic success, in preparation for career success. These are all the areas that we really want to master and be a support to your success. So one thing to really take this to the next level and make this something where it's not just throwing information at you is we want to close out today's webinar with a prompt. And I would challenge you to think about what it is that you plan to take from today's presentation to apply towards future learning experiences. What are some of those things? Is it one key takeaway? Is it maybe three key takeaways that you have from some items that were shared today that can apply towards future learning experiences? One example I could share for myself that was a really critical learning experience in relation to the learning style was discovering that I was a multimodal learner. So my learning preference is both visual and kinesthetic. And so I would notice in certain classes, I could easily be distracted. As a visual learner, trying to create different opportunities to see information and learn and process information through what it is that I see. And visual connection to learning was important. But I also discovered that that also opened up a window for distraction. So one of my classrooms in particular had the entire left side of that classroom was a glass window facing the quad area of campus. And in this class, I would find that I was distracted by every action that was happening in this quad area for that particular class. If it happened to be a windy day and the trees are moving, my attention would go from lecture to, wow, it's windy outside. Or if someone I knew on campus was walking on the pathway in the quad, oh, I know him, I know her. And so you'd go from this point of focus on what's happening in class to all of a sudden what's happening outside has my attention. So what I had to do was I had to go into class a little bit early to get to a particular seat, a couple seats, and I'd have to shift the chair a little bit to where my back was to the window and I could focus more so on the class. In future semesters, because that was the semester when I learned my learning style, in future semesters, this was also true for classes that had the clear little box of a window on the door. So the same thing, if I was situated and I'm facing the door and I can see other classes in the hallway getting out, my attention would go from lecture to all of a sudden, oh, they're getting out of class early. Oh, how come we're not getting out of class early? Oh, what time is it? Oh, they let them out 10 minutes early. And so my mind would just start to wander and go into a whole different left field because of that visual learning style. So in knowing that, really ask yourself this question, take note of what are the things that you've discovered about yourself, our earlier prompt, and then what are some things you plan to take from today's presentation that can be applied towards future learning experiences. And I think having those honest conversations and having our own assessment of these things can really help make the information shared today have extreme value in the future in how we process new information and learning new material. So with that, I want to thank you for your time and commitment to today's webinar. I would like to open up continued conversation and continued support when it comes to academic success. My entire Supportnet team is available. We have great coaches in our office. You can reach our team if you'd like to schedule an appointment via email. So you can send us an email at supportnet@csufresno.edu. In those appointments, we can talk about specific aspects of academic success you'd like to improve. So this could include areas like really understanding more about your learning style. We could also work on creating a structured time management system We can give you strategies for how to overcome habits such as procrastination, and overall, just methods of strengthening your study habits, campus resource knowledge, and so many more aspects that go into success. So, if you like that support, I encourage you to reach out to us and take advantage of that support. So, again, thank you for your time. My name is Jamal Washington, and it's been a pleasure to share Discovering Your Learning Style. Take a few minutes following this webinar to complete our short survey, which is going to be a necessary step in logging workshop attendance. So, if you're in one of the programs that requires attendance for the workshop, take a few moments and do that short survey. Click the link on our academic success workshop page for the survey, and be sure to enter your student ID number correctly, or enter your student Fresno State email address for that first box that asks for your student information.